So now I would like to welcome to the stage. This is a really important session because we had a lot of AMEC input and collaboration with this very special project. So I'd like to welcome to the stage for the UNDP Weather Kids Global Task Force for Good, Andras, Rob, Reina, you will all know we call her Runny, and Dylan. And I think I'd like to welcome Rob Morbin to the stage first, please. Please join me up here on stage, everyone.
Good morning. Thanks very much, Jonna, for the introduction. Very excited to be back in Sofia. The first time I was here was actually March 2020. So there was a lot of elbow bumping instead of handshaking. It was a little bit of a ghost town. So it's really good to be back in normal times and much happier circumstances. So for those that don't know, ECO, we are the Federation of National PR Associations and their PR agency members around the world. So we have 40 associations and collectively represent over 3,000 PR agencies within that. So what's this session about? Well, it's about a really good PR campaign, global campaign, and a world first, which Dylan will talk a little bit more about. But first and foremost, it's about a unique collaboration between ICCO and UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme. So I'll start at the beginning. What was the strategy from ICCO? Why did our members and our board members want us to partner with UNDP? I think there's some obvious answers to that. So straight away, it's one of the most, if not the most credible international intergovernmental organizations in the world. And it has such a big impact and influence on a lot of the priority issues that are important for our members, PR agencies, and also the AMEC members that are part of ECO as well. Of course, a lot of our members are the big global networked multinationals, the Omnicoms, IPGs, and they do have an impact on some of these issues like climate change, sustainability, misinformation, ethics, quality standards, all these different things that we want to have an impact on. But for many of our members in smaller markets, this is a real opportunity for them to put some weight and credibility behind their CSR and purpose credentials. So it's very important for them, and it's a hugely compelling proposition for them to be part of a collaboration with UNDP. As well as the kind of positioning for ECO and for our members, it's also really important, this collaboration, in terms of the positioning for the industry. We know that with a lot of big organizations, the people at the top don't necessarily know what the impact or the value of PR is, and we see this collaboration, and we have seen this collaboration as an opportunity to shift the dial on that and really demonstrate the value of PR and sophisticated measurement and evaluation on a campaign like some of the campaigns that we want to work with on UNDP, and we'll hear about one in a lot of detail. And if we do shift that dial, the next thing is around future business. Okay, we've worked with UNDP, the United Nations, that puts us in a certain category. And I think that puts us on a really good platform to work with other organizations, intergovernmental national organizations that are aligned to our priorities. And Andras will talk a little bit more about how that fits in with long-term growth plan. So when we put this collaboration together in the summer last year, the first thing that UNDP came to us with was the Weather Kids campaign, which we'll hear more detail on. And before we even had a working group or anything like that, they said, we want you and your members to own the earned media for this particular campaign. So straight away, we put together a task force of our members from around the world, covering 6 different continents and lots of different specialisms. And that was the CCT, the Climate Communication Task Force, And the real purpose of that was to lead on the messaging and the strategy for media pitching and media distribution, develop the materials, as well as find activation partners in as many markets around the world as possible, and introduce earned media objectives, which is something we think we can tool up a little bit better next time. But this is just the first campaign, and we hope that there's going to be many more. So the activation, an asterisk on there, wasn't quite every nation. I think we had 80 different markets where we were able to get pro bono and media distribution, pitching, interview placements, and enact that strategy that was put together by the Taskforce. It was also really important to link together our activation partners in local markets with the local UNDP office, and we feel like those relationships will be hugely beneficial to both the local UNDP offices and our activation partners going forward. And then as a kind of secondary priority, we gave the activation partners the job of social media buzz and influencer activations. So really it was around print, broadcast, coverage, but then in some markets there is less of an appetite in the traditional media to cover climate stories. For example, China and some markets in Southeast Asia. And so the influencer strategy was more important in those particular markets. And then something that Raina will speak to in a lot more detail is the alliance of the various AMEC members that came together to own the measurement and reporting as part of the activation. So that was the first campaign that we've done with UNDP. We feel like it was a really great success. Of course, there are improvements that we can make, but it's a really good first step. We had 45 agencies involved across 80 markets, and it's the UNDP's biggest PR activation for one of their climate campaigns. And the feedback, we'll hear from the client, I suppose, next, but the feedback was very much that it exceeded expectations, and the expectations from our members when we think about the strategy of why we were putting this partnership together had been achieved, the contacts and experience and opportunity to have that kind of impact. When we think about the next campaign, we want to look more closely at being involved in some of the creative and the objective setting before we get to the earned media bit, and I think that's something that UNDP are aligned with us on. So we have achieved that goal of trying to shift the dial and elevate the reputation of and the importance and value of PR and sophisticated measurement and evaluation within the UNDP, I hope. And then we'll also look to see how that aligns with some of our wider strategy, which Andras will come on to. But just to kind of summarize what we think was a success, and this is from Boaz Paldi, the Chief Creative Officer. So he's clearly endorsing us there, and if these kinds of messages can get through to people in senior roles within the United Nations and UNDP in particular, then I think we've really started to achieve something. So now I'll pass over to Dylan, who will go into a little bit more detail about the Weather Kids campaign. Dylan.
Great, thanks, Rob. Pleasure to meet you all. I'm Dylan from UNDP, and as Rob said, also playing the role of the happy client on this partnership. I'm going to talk a little bit about the campaign itself, and then about the role that Emily and that many of you in the room played on helping us with the campaign. But first of all, just a note about UNDP, what we are, what we do, in case anyone's not familiar. I like to tell a quick story. Several years ago, the Guardian newspaper in the UK ran a series of profiles of UN agencies, the top UN agencies and what they do and what they're for. And so the first day it was UNICEF, obviously, because UNICEF, the power of the brand, you know, and the next day it was OCHA, and then UNDP was not mentioned, and each day there would be a new profile appear. And on, I think, the fifth day, we looked at the Guardian website, and UNDP was there, and we were described as the dull workhorse of the United Nations system. But I prefer to think of us as a sleeping giant of the United Nations system. So UNDP, we are the largest UN agency, not necessarily the best, but we are the largest with 6,000 projects across 170 countries and territories. And we also have an enormous portfolio of climate change projects. And we do, crucially, a lot of work with governments on their national climate pledges under the Paris Agreement. This year is a really important year for that, because next year under the Paris Agreement is one of the 5-year cycles when countries need to submit their new 5-year round of climate action pledges. And we're working with 140 of those countries on making those pledges as strong as they can be next year. So we have a big footprint in terms of our climate change work, which got us to this campaign because we were saying to ourselves, okay, we do all this work with governments, what can we do that allows everybody, not just governments, but people all around the world to get involved and to take meaningful climate action. We know what the problem is. The problem is pretty well known, but how can we engage people, everyday people, not just policymakers, not just governments. And that's really where Weather Kids was born, and we came up with this idea of the weather. I'm British. The stereotype is true. We love to talk about the weather, so I was particularly happy that this campaign was very weather-focused. And the starting point was that, the weather really isn't small talk anymore. It's every day there's weather forecasts coming in with news of more and more natural disasters happening. And we wanted to find a way to sort of harness this in a way that was meaningful and impactful for people. And we came up with the idea of using children to report the weather from the future. So the idea is that the news programs, weather forecasts would be taken over by our weather kids who were given a weather report from the year 2050. And we used data from the IPCC and from our own Climate Horizons data platform to make sure that the weather that they were reporting was within sort of what is scientifically projected. And the message was really about, using these kids to represent the generational impact of climate change, right? Climate change, the largest impacts are going to be on the children of today and the future generations. And the messaging that we wanted to do was that, these kids end up the segment with asking the adults on their behalf and world leaders on their behalf to take climate action before it's too late. And then the call to action at the end of that, at the end of the segment, you are led to a website, weatherkids.org, where you can sign up, take a pledge, learn more about UNDP, learn more about climate change issues, and take individual actions. As Rob started out, we had a huge number of partners on this project. This slide doesn't mention all of them, but mentions some of the media partners that we had on the project. UNDP is a very small, has a very small communications team, and we can't undertake these global campaigns by ourselves. We don't have the capacity. So we were really reliant on a huge number of partners, and we're extremely thankful to ICCO, but also many of you here who helped with the M&E part. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. I will throw my hands up in the air and say that we were previously on previous campaigns, our measurement and evaluation was, shall I say, somewhat rudimentary, definitely not sophisticated. And I remember having a meeting with Jonna, and she fired all these questions at me of data points and metrics, and I was like a rabbit in the headlights. And she was extremely patient with me, and put together a team of people, and we worked together on a framework for properly measuring and evaluating the impact of the campaign, which was really new to us at UNDP. I have to say, we had not done anything like that before, and it was hugely helpful. And I think for us, the main lesson learned was that, as Rob was saying, with ICCO coming in at sort of later stage, having that element in place right at the beginning, at the conceptual stage of the campaign, in future is something that we're really keen on doing, because it was a huge eye-opener for us and extremely helpful. And I do want to actually mention, because obviously in the room there are various organizations here who really helped, so I really want to give a shout out to TV Eyes, Ornico, Cometric, Muckrack, and of course Raina from RuPoint.
And TV Ice. TV Ice as well.
Oh, TV Ice.
Yes.
Thank you, Raina. So thank you to all of those for helping us with that. So I think let's watch the weather forecast from 2050.
I'm Kaylee with the very special weather report. From up there to down here, everything is crazy. If we don't listen to scientists, things are going to be even crazier when I grow up. Let's look at the forecast for 2050. Heat waves will affect 94% of children, making playing outside a thing of the past. Extreme droughts will wipe out wheat crops, killing the one food my brother eats, bread. Disasters will cost taxpayers almost $6 trillion. My parents hate taxes. Of course, all of this is caused by a blanket of heat-trapping pollution in the atmosphere that we could just not put up there. But don't worry, there's still a chance of clear skies. Right now, clean energy systems are moving in from the east to the west, creating tons of cool jobs. And solar prices have dropped lower than oil and gas. Going to the satellite, it looks like a high-pressure system of grown-ups could still move in and protect kids from an avalanche of really bad stuff. Some gusty political winds ahead, but they're no match for the power of Hurricane Felicia. That's my mom. We'll keep you posted as we track if adults stop wasting time and fix this totally solvable problem. Because it's not just a weather report to us, it's our future.
And so I do encourage you actually to go to the website and take the pledge yourselves. It's weatherkids.org. With that, I'll pass over to you, Raina.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much. What a fascinating video. I watched it with some kids in the room and they were very excited about going to the website. And if you haven't done it yet, I think you can still log your pledge, put in your the child's name, just first name, into the pledge. And I think hopefully we will continue measuring the longer term impact of this and other activations as part of this campaign. So my role, and I'm a co-founder of RuPoint, but I am with my AMEC hat on. I represent a number of organizations, both the ones that participated directly or indirectly in delivering this measurement framework, but also AMEC as a whole and what we stand for and what we represent. So just as a starter about AMEC's role as part of this campaign. So obviously our most immediate role was to build an integrated measurement framework to measure the effectiveness of this campaign. But also longer term, we wanted to create a blueprint for the UNDP to measure future activations, give an idea and an example. As Dylan said, we all have a lot to learn, and embracing that learning process was a big part of what we did and how we approached the project with ECO, the UNDP and all the activation partners. We wanted also to inform future decisions as well as provide more data-driven insights into how the campaign performed. So with all that in mind, the process would be very familiar to most of you in the room. It's worth mentioning that as everyone else involved, we did, all the work we did was provided pro bono with the support of AMEC and a number of AMEC members. The process was basically starting from us, looking at the campaign's objectives, the communication objectives specifically. We analyzed all the materials, the press kit, and we spoke with some of the activation partners and the task force itself to make sure that we can capture everything that was created probably before we actually joined the initiative. As a second step, we had to work with all the data. We analyzed the first week after the campaign. The data collection was challenging, as it always is with global initiatives. Some of the markets are more challenging than others, and we saw these challenges in practice. Normalizing the data was part of the exercise. We worked with the activation partners in market to collect data where we didn't have a partner or a provider or TV monitoring wasn't in place, and it's really important to mention the fact that the campaign was driven and was the kind of main core channel was TV, right? So that's always, when you look at 70 markets around the world, how do you monitor what has been pushed through in all those 70 markets? So a lot of work was done by the local activation partners, and bringing that together was a data challenge with a lot of data integrity problems. But we overcame this problem. We worked on the analysis, a combination of automated and human analysis as part of the process. We used large language models to go through the data very quickly. We had 1 week or a few days after the first week to deliver the first results, and some of those were used for follow-up initiatives. So that needed to be turned around very quickly. And as a last stage, we worked on the delivery of the framework. So here are a few screenshots. I'm sure all of you will be probably trying to read them. That's not the purpose of it, but we can always share with you some of those insights with the permission of the UNDP, of course. But it's interesting to look at some of the main pillars here. So objectives-wise, we had the key CTA, which was we wanted people to take urgent climate action by signing the pledge, but there were a number of medium and long-term objectives related to influencing the information environment surrounding COP28, and importantly, positioning the UNDP as a leading UN organization fighting climate change and a thought leader in the same area. There was a number of activities, as you saw, number of markets activation partners. There was a large number of assets that had to be taken into account. TikTok was a big part of social engagement, was a big part of the campaign, wasn't it? And interestingly, it's anecdotal, but the week before the launch of the campaign, I think the American government said that they're going to ban TikTok. So there was a big concern around, well, how are we going to actually do anything, nothing to say about listening or measuring what's happening in that medium. The target audience was the public at large with focus on children, but obviously the action had to be taken by the parents. And so a lot of different strategic inputs. The outputs we looked at were close to 1,500 items in the first week after the launch, a number of different markets. We saw a lot of press release syndication that amplified the messaging of the campaign. Broadcast was great, and where it existed and generated coverage, it returned a lot of UNDP mentions, so that was always very good. So yeah, a lot of buzz in social. We looked at all these different channels. Outtake-wise, an awful lot of feedback for the UNDP and numbers that I think is fair to say were new to those guys and interesting to look at for the first time. And outcome-wise as well, obviously, the people signing the pledge, this is an ongoing process with multiple activations. Next steps are to follow. But also we looked at some more immediate outcomes in terms of UNDP's positioning by running some independent Google searches and just seeing how things like the Climate Hub, which was a new initiative that the UNDP had launched, actually performs in Google. And you can see the results straight away. And again, these were things that might be very straightforward for all of you here in the room, but it's very powerful to see when a client sees something like this for the first time. And we were speaking with Boaz at the time, and he's like, hold on this one. I really want to show this to my bosses because this really proves the impact of what we have done. And so as a last just summary, there are a number of longer term outcomes to be measured in the coming months and years. Hopefully, AMEC can continue to partner with the UNDP and ECO. We should probably look at some point and how longer term this has improved the brand of the UNDP and your own key messages in terms of how you want to be perceived. You spoke about the Guardian article, maybe in a year's time, where does that sit? And so looking at how measurement can become part of your business as usual and how you can use it on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's on. So my role now is just to basically give a quick recap of all the players who have played and showcase the importance of the partnership and working together on this campaign. So quick recap on how this partnership was structured. So there was activist creative agency who came up with the concept and UNDP has approved, and then ECO came in with the request of providing media and PR support, but it ended up we did a little bit more. So we launched the Climate Communication Taskforce, as Rob has explained. And while UNDP was working on with their own partners, Met offices and local offices and other partners, the ECO's CCT role was basically to create a strategy, fine-tuning the narrative, positioning, key messaging for the campaign, and we divided the activation, the PR activity into two streams. And the first one was the activation partners, where we needed the help and the support of PR agencies and PR professionals like individual freelancers from all over the world to provide earned media coverage. But at the same time, we wanted to introduce the importance of measurement and valuation into the process. And I'm sorry, but my slides included the AMEC logo, so I'm sorry for that, but it's not shown over here. So we invited AMEC at both levels, so at the implementation level. So some of you have been participating in media monitoring and valuation, but also Reina and Jonah was part of the communication task force. So we raised AMEC and measurement evaluation at a very strategic level of this campaign. And I think that this really showcases the importance that PR is a bit more than, not a bit, but a lot more than just simply media relations and pitching journalists. So what would the extra value? I think, and to me, that proved that the importance of the PR industry is not just media relations, but strategic counsel as well. So I think that was probably the greatest value apart from, or besides the media coverage across the globe, that we could introduce strategic thinking about doing a campaign like this. And being a corporate communication consultant, mostly for corporations, for over 2 decades, as a personal note, I've seen that working with corporations, the results, the strategy, and the efficiency is always very important. But when you work with NGOs, when you start to work with NGOs, because they are less resourceful, they're more focusing on getting creative campaigns out of that, and they're more focusing on outputs instead of impacts at the end. And I think that the greatest value the PR could bring into this partnership is to showcase the importance of how to think about even creative campaigns and even NGO campaigns, not-profit campaigns, from a strategic perspective. So what ICCO has brought to the table is a multi-stakeholder approach. Again, I'm trying to emphasize it. It was more than just pitching journalists. We talked about different stakeholders, other NGOs, tech companies, as well as obviously the general public. Again, I would like to emphasize that we were not just focusing at the beginning. We were focusing basically the output, which was the campaign on the very date, so the 21st of March. But with the support of AMEC, we wanted to emphasize and showcase that this campaign cannot be only about signing the pledges, but how to raise awareness of the issue, how to raise awareness and build reputation for UNDP, and how to change behavior, because ultimately that's what's needed to fight the climate change. We also did some crisis preparation. Reina has mentioned the TikTok issue, but there were 2 other issues which I'd like to highlight. The first one was the use of AI, and that was also a question at several discussions, because when UNDP has produced the videos, there were questions, there were opportunities to use AI, not only for translations, but also to do the original videos in different languages with the same person. And we just raised this concern, and we talked about it a lot, of what would be the potential outcome of using AI in this technology, namely just being accused of fake news because we are creating, fake people. So how to use AI for a good is sometimes it's challenging. And the other issue which I'd like to highlight was basically when we planned the Cannes Lions activity. And Cannes Lions is more about showing off and putting everything in front of the screen. And since we are planning a lot of very creative activations over there, there was another threat of being accused of greenwashing if it's not credible enough. So there was another issue where we supported UNDP on this whole campaign from a crisis preparation perspective. In terms of the content, I think it was also a bit more than just creating copy, because I mean, Dylan is in the room, so I can say, and I cannot say anything else, but UNDP has very high skills of copywriters and creating good content. But in terms of positioning, narrative, a different approach, and also what to emphasize and what not to emphasize was an important factor for us. And obviously the partnership, as you have seen, that there are lots of different stakeholders in this room. So what's the future of the Climate Communication Task Force? As I said, we are planning huge activations in Cannes Lions in about a month from now. EICCO is playing a role by shooting videos and having panel discussions on the topic and the lessons learned from this campaign. And I really hope, and fingers crossed, that this Climate Communication Task Force will survive and will remain as a think tank, both for UNDP and other UNDP campaigns and other PR-driven campaigns for other associations. And what's the future of ICCO? I think that we are still trying to keep being the global voice of the PR agency sector, and obviously keen to participate in campaigns like this, where we can show the added value of PR beyond media relations and journalist content. Obviously, we would like to emphasize the importance of PR can play in creating impact for a better good. ICCO is playing a role in policy and legislation making, mainly in Europe. We are a consultation partner for the Council of Europe. So, for example, our president, Gregors, is coming in the afternoon, right away from Strasbourg, where we had a huge policy roundtable with tech giants on AI Act and misinformation and disinformation. And last but definitely not least, since our profession is about dialogue, about conversations, we really invite all of you to have conversations with us, with ICCO. We're all of us staying here for the rest of today and tomorrow, and we're happy to discuss details about this campaign, but also potential future partnerships with ICCO in that sense. And with further ado, I thank you again, UNDP, for partnering with us, and AMEC and all of your members of being a supportive partner in this campaign. And Jonah, back to you.
Thank you so much. That was a power through a campaign that we can really start to see that measurement appetite growing with an organization, which is great. I'm not going to take any questions right now, but I do want to clarify something before we release everybody for break. We all love the UNDP, and Rob said that it was the most influential NGO, and he is entitled to his opinion. We have some other NGOs in the room that would like to have a spirited debate around just who might be the most influential, but we'll save that for the coffee break. Rob's a gentle soul and good spirits. Do not take it out on him. But as he said, they are all going to be here for the rest of the day and for the evening tonight. And Nicole is also going to be there for the break. So I encourage you all to take advantage of the networking opportunities, ask those questions, encourage that measurement appetite, because that really is something that, as we see that in those sparks, it helps us all understand what the future is going to be for us. We are going to give an extra 5 minutes, so I'd ask everyone to be back in here at 10:55. I know hopefully you can caffeinate and do some networking within that time, because you won't want to be late and miss the measurement journey of Astra. And it really is embracing measurement and understanding the value of communication. And Lana is here from Jakarta, and it is something that if you miss a minute, you will miss a lot. So please try to be back on time at 10:55, and we look forward to seeing you here. To our virtual attendees, you have a couple minute break too, so please join us back in another round of applause for ECO and for the UNDP panel. Thank you.